What is up? Daniel here with the Virtual Robotics Studio, and we are back for the next video. This time we are going to get all of our polycarbonate cut down to size. But before we get started, we've got to give a special thanks to Argosy for making this all possible, to First and Andymark for parts and support, and to our hosts here, Team 302, Lake Orion High School. So the parts list has a 4-foot by 4-foot piece of polycarbonate. It's very important, though, that when you go to buy this, you are buying polycarbonate and not acrylic. So they both look similar. The acrylic is going to be much, much cheaper, and it's going to be tempting to get, but acrylic is not strong enough. It will shatter or crack or break almost assuredly on your robot compared to the polycarbonate, which can take, intense direct hits and still be good. I think polycarbonate is like the material they make bulletproof glass out of. My piece is a little bit longer. It was actually a 4-foot by 8-foot section. So I've got what's left of that. I've got, I don't know, 60 inches maybe, 50 some inches. That's fine. Everything will fit on the 4-foot by 4-foot sheet, but we need to think a little bit about how we're going to lay it out, right? Like if we just cut one piece out and then another random piece and another random piece, it may not fit. So if we look through all of the pieces that we're dealing with here, what you will notice is 3 pieces are 18 inches wide, and that is KB 25012, 25020, and 25021. These pieces, oh, sorry, not 12, 2510. So 2510, 2520, and 2521 are all 18 inches wide. So in theory, if we cut an 18-inch strip off of our material, then we could then cut that down into the smaller pieces to make some of those. KB 2512 is 18.25 inches, so it's almost the same. It's 18 1/4. So we probably will have to pair that with one of our other 18s. If we look at the distance, this one is 18 wide. So this is 25010. This is the biggest piece. It is 18 inches wide by 32 inches long. And this whole piece should be really close to 48, but sometimes you never know. Actually, 48 1/2. I'm a little over half here, 48 5/8 or so. OK, cool. So if we do a 32-inch piece, that is 32 inches of our 48. Then what else can we fit? So this one is 18 by 18. Well, 32 and 18 would be 50, so that's not going to fit in our 48 1/2. So I think we can pair this one with this one. This is 18 by 12. So if we add 12 to this, we're at 44. That's going to fit easily. So if we do these two in one 18-inch strip, that's going to work out. Then if we take these two, so this one is 18.25 by 18.25. So 18.25. And this one is 18 by 18. So if we add 18 to that, we're going to get 36.25. So that should also fit quite easily in our 48-inch section. Now, we can do one strip at 18 inches, make our first 2 pieces out of that. We can do the next strip at 18 1/4, make the next 2 out of that. And then if we want to, this back panel guard or back guard panel, KB021, would technically at that point be 18 by 18 1/4 instead of the 18 by 18 in the drawing. Now, I know from experience and testing this once, there is enough room for that piece to be a 1/4 inch longer, like easily enough room. So we could just leave that one at 18 1/4 and everything's going to go together and it saves us a whole cut. So that is something that we might do, but I'll also show how you could then cut it down to 18 afterwards. So that's 2 strips that we're going to do. And then our last piece is the track side panel KB 25011. And this is 6 inches wide by 20.75 long. So 2 20.75s would be 41 1/2. Also fits. So then we'll do a strip at 6 inches, and then we'll cut that down into the 2 track side panel pieces. All right, so let's start with our 2 18-inch pieces. And we'll get that marked up on this giant sheet here. All right. So what we know is we need about 18 inches off this edge. There are a few different ways that we can mark this. One is if we feel like the edge is nice and clean, you can take, like a big drywall or big layout square like this. and use that to make your marks. You could make one mark at 18, because that's what we're looking for. And this is going to be harder to be more precise than the Sharpie. So try to put your Sharpie mark in a place where you can do it. So here, I'm going to put the Sharpie mark just on the inside of 18. So in theory, I would want to cut that, or I would want to leave that whole line as part of my 18. And if this piece is square, I can then rotate this, and that line all the way across should be 18. I don't trust that it's square yet, though, so I'm going to do another check. So another way you can do this, if you don't have the big layout square, you can do your 18-inch mark here with a tape measure. That one is still right on. And sometimes these disappear on these materials, so you could add something big to make sure you don't lose track of it. And then if I go to the other side of the piece, I can do another 18-inch mark. So we'll come over here somewhere, and again measure out to 18. And you can use the, you can try to use the writing on the thing to line yourself up and try to be straight. Although these are like cascading, so I don't actually know which ones line up with each other. Okay, like none of them line up with each other, so that's less helpful. Just try to make sure this dimension stays about the same. We'll go out to 18, and again, the outside of my line, I want to just leave the line as part of the piece. So we have another one here. Then we can check, when I bring this drywall square in or to my first line, actually that's perfectly on the second line. So I believe that my edge, this edge that I'm measuring off of, is actually square. Now, if yours is not, or you don't have one of these, the way you can make your line is just get any long straight edge. This is just kind of what's left over from our aluminum cutting in the step before if you have an extra piece. But anything that's long enough, if you put it on both of your marks, then that can also be used to trace that line. So this is sort of like the line where we want our 18-inch pieces to be. I can go all the way out to this end and then come back all the way out to this end. And now we have to make our decision on how we want to cut this. So there are a few different ways to cut this piece. Obviously, if you have a giant bandsaw, you could do that. If you have a table saw and people know how to use it safely, you can cut this stuff on a table saw, and that'll give you a nice straight edge. If you have no tools whatsoever, you can actually clamp down. Like if we put this on the edge of the table, we could clamp this down. We could then cut it with a razor blade over and over again, and then force down on the end that's hanging off the table, and it will snap at that point. Like if this is clamped tightly and we create that stress riser, you can push down and snap it. That leaves a little bit of like an edge on there as it breaks. So you don't get a nice clean flat edge from that all the time, but you usually can get a straight line because, again, if you have, probably I would use something thinner as the thing, but I can get the razor blade right up against it and just keep running that to get a good shape. I'll do one example of that, but I think the easiest way is if you do have a circular saw. That is probably going to be the best way to do it. Now, for my circular saw, I can actually use this outside edge as a guide to stay against something. So I can have a clamp guide to help me cut straight. But from that edge to the saw blade is a distance, right, that we need to know in order to make this work. And I think it's about 1.5 inches. It's just over 1.5 inches distance. So this 18-inch line that I have marked here is where I hope my saw blade is going to hit. And if I'm freehanding it, that works. But if I take this piece and I clamp it 1.5 inches away, then I'll be able to just put my saw right against that and just stay right against that for the whole cut and get a nice clean cut, clean straight cut. So what that means is I actually want to measure not to 18 for this one. I'm going to do another line. And I like having the 18-inch line too, because that line, when I go to start cutting, if I'm not right on that line, I know there's a problem. But instead of 18, we're going to go to 19 19.5. And then I think I need just a little bit more for the edge of this blade. So I'm going to go to 19.5, and I'm going to put the line just a hair past it. And you'll have to check with your saw what that dimension is. If you need to, you can always like do a test cut on some scrap material and see what that dimension needs to be for you. So 19.5 and just a tiny bit past it. All right. And so we got our marks here and here, so I don't lose track of them. And then I think we found out that it was pretty square last time, so I'll come up to the mark here, and that looks pretty good over there. So we'll take this line, and I guess I don't really need that line because that's just where I'm going to go to clamp down my guide. Now, let's see. This piece is way wider than my table is wide, so I think I'm going to have to rotate this whole thing to make this cut. So let's go this way. Okay, and it's good too because I can see through this. I know that the 18-inch line needs to be off the table because that's where I'm actually going to cut. But then I also want the other line sort of on the table because that gives me a little bit of support for the edge of the saw blade. So I'm going to kind of, be about in the middle, as close as I feel comfortable. And then we can take anything that is straight and ideally metal or solid, and we're just going to clamp this in place right on that line. So get one side, come back over here, get this side. This side, could be in trouble because we need room for the saw to go. Let me see, how much can I move over to get extra space here? Try sliding this down a bit. I'm not sure if this is going to be far enough or not. If this isn't far enough, I can get a longer piece of metal probably. Yeah, so that works, but I have to plunge in first. So let's go with a longer piece of metal here. So then I can clamp one end over here like I did last time. Right on that line. And then here I can clamp way farther over. Okay, so this is still kind of clamped in. It's still squeezing down on it. Looks like we're on the line. Looks good. All right. So if you have two people for this, one person can help support this end that's waving around. I'll do my best to hold on to that with one hand and the saw with the other. But ideally, you can have two hands on the saw, and another person can be out here supporting the two ends of the material. And what I'm going to do is just to make sure that I got my measurements right, first of all, I have a mark here, which is going to show me the line. And then I can also see the saw blade where that's showing up. And we can kind of measure as well from this notch on my saw to the end of the piece. And that looks like it was 18 before I dropped it. It actually looks like we are just a tiny bit over. Let's see what happens if I make a quick cut. So I'm just going to take a little tiny nibble off the edge of the piece here. And then we can look and see, comparing that nibble to the line, it looks like, I can't remember if we wanted to keep the line or not. We want to keep the line. It looks like that's really, really close to the edge of the line. So that's going to be good enough for me. So we're going to go ahead and make the cut all the way across. If you're using this technique, you want to keep the saw, it will be able to sort of rotate on you. So you want to make sure you're sort of keeping it down on the table side. And also make sure you stay right against the guide, the metal guide, as you go. Make sure you start with the saw not touching the piece and spin it up. And here we go. All right. I think I forgot to lock the wheel on the table, so it rolled a little bit on me. But I think we're good. Let's see what our dimension looks like. And this plastic stuff gets everywhere when you cut it. That is very, very close to 18. And if I marked and clamped straight, this should also be very close to 18. This is off. I'm off by just about a 16th of an inch, maybe just over a 16th of an inch. So we can watch that when we do the next one, but that is close enough. Remember, it was plus or minus a 16th of an inch, and I promise you this piece can be off by even more than that and be okay. All right, so let's see. Let me, yeah, give me a second. Let me vacuum up all of the dust on the table and then move the big piece out of the way so we can cut this one down into the two pieces that we're going to turn it into. All right, we're back just with the 18-inch wide strip that we cut. Let's go ahead and make KB 25010 first. This is 32 inches long. So we'll measure off of this side for 32 inches. And we'll do a little mark. Okay, and ideally, I'm leaving the line that I made, and then we'll do one more mark on the other side. This time I can line it up right along the edge of these things, and that helps a little bit. All right, 32. We want to leave the line. All right, so we got here and here. Okay, let's see. We're gonna spin this around this way. Oh, right, and wait, because I'm going to do the same trick I did before. Let me spin that back around. So the 32, this is, and we'll mark this, this is where we want the cut to end up. So we go right on those two lines. So this is ideally where we want the cut to be, but in order to clamp the piece on so we have a guide, we need to go another 1.5 inches. So instead of 32, we're going to go to 33.5 here. Plus just a tiny bit for the extra bit of the blade. All right. And that extra bit is like, I don't know, about a 32nd of an inch. For me, 33.5 plus that 32nd of an inch. All right. So those are where we're going to clamp our piece. And I'm going to spin it around because this, see, what I had just done was, if I clamp it there, I have to cut on that side. So really, right, so in this case, if I put the marker here, I'd be cutting on the wrong side of the piece. So I would have to clamp this side on, and I don't want to do that just because there's so much more on this side. So when I said add 1.5 inches, what I meant in this case was subtract 1.5 inches. So instead of 33 and a, or 32, we're going to do 30.5. 30.5. Okay, same thing over here. 30.5. All right. Now we can spin it around. Make sure the cut line is off the edge of the table here. And then we can line up our guide. Okay. And same thing as before. Just going to kind of eyeball it. That looks pretty lined up, but we want the line to stay. Let's do a little nibble. Okay, that is going to remove the line. And let me double check that we want the line to stay. Oh, wait, because I have to measure this way, which is going to be harder, but not impossible. I can go through the clamp here. I think. Yeah. Oh, yes, we want the line to stay. So we are cutting too much. I got to slide that way just a little bit. I'm going to go to the other side of my marked line here. Because basically I was cutting right on the line, so I need to move over the thickness of one line. All right, and that looks good. Let's do another little test here. That looks better, lined up just on the other side of the line. Yep, and I can see that's going to go right along the edge of that line. So we're ready to go. Let's make our cut. Okay, that is our extra piece. The one we actually care about is this one. Let's measure. And I can see the lines, so I think we should be really, really close. That's exactly 32 on that end. It is exactly 32 on that end. So this piece is cut to length. Let's label it so we remember which piece it is. This is, once again, KB 2510. KB 25010. And if you are the kind of person who knows we need to label them, but you don't want like handwriting all over your robot, well, the good news is there's this plastic coating or this like little like sheet like on cell phones or where you get electronics that peels off. So this is going to peel off once we're done with the machining the part before we finally assemble it. If you want to get rid of the ones like from the aluminum from the last step, you can do that. You can clean it off with some alcohol usually. We'll do it. Or probably various other solvents. Okay, so this piece is good. Next up, we said we were going to pair this with the 12-inch piece because this is not long enough for the other one, if I remember correctly. So this is our 18. This direction, we have 16.5, and 12 is the biggest piece we can get out of it. So we're going to mark this one up to cut it down to 12 inches. That is going to be for KB 25020. So an 18 by 12 inch piece. And I think, okay, so this is our 18 this way. Yeah. And if you remember, my piece was a little bit off at the end. Like this is still very close to 18. This end is short a little bit. So I'm going to use this side, the side that's a little bit wider. All right, let's mark that up then. 12 inches. Okay, and then, but I'm going to end up cutting. So we'll do a mark at 12 here. And I'm going to want to leave this line. Mark at 12 over here. And we want to leave that line as well. And we can do a quick line. This is our checking line. It's pretty good. All right, so that's the line we want to leave when we cut here. But in order to make that cut, we're going to clamp it this way and then cut here. So we need to be 1.5 inches short of that for our next cut. So instead of 12, we're going to line our thing up at 10.5. Same thing over here, 10.5. All right, so we'll spin this one around. Make sure the cut line is going to be off the table. All right, and get this side. Okay, that looks good. We'll line it up with the saw and see how we're looking. That looks a little too close to me because we wanted to keep this line. So once again, I'm gonna go to the other side of my line here. Looks like it's a little bit more than 1.5 if we come from the other side and a little bit less than 1.5 if we come from this side, if we're on the side that we are keeping. So I'll slide those over to the other side of my line. Let's check it out again. That looks pretty good, but I want to get a little bit farther off the table here. I think that was a little too close. I was afraid I was going to cut the table. Let's realign this side since I just twisted everything. All right, that is looking good. Let's do a little test. And that is looking like it's going to just perfectly leave the line. All right, let's go ahead and cut this. And let's see how we did. 12 inches, and this side also pretty much 12 inches. All right, that's perfect. This is what we need. Now, those two pieces that we just had, let me label this one. This was, we said, KB 25020. All right, so KB 25020. Okay. Now, these pieces, these plastic pieces, also need a few more steps done. So we're going to finish off these two, and then we'll bring the big sheet back and we'll rip our next line. So on the drawing, there are a few things that get called out. First of all, we have the edges where it needs to get deburred anyway. But on all of the corners, it says 4XR 0.25 break edge. So that's saying it wants a 0.25 inch radius corner there. So it wants us to not have sharp corners on the edges of the pieces here, but instead to have rounded edges. And that's just because the corners, if they're sharp, they can scratch, poke, cut, pop, balls, etc. So what we can do is just take a file, and if you run the file sort of around the corner like this, it will eventually sort of break that corner down. Now don't worry about, like it says a 0.25 inch radius. Don't at all worry about that. It doesn't really matter. As long as you sort of round the corner over so there's not a sharp edge there, you're going to be in good shape. So you kind of just work the file through that range of motions. Basically, you're starting flat on one edge, and ending flat on the other edge, and that's going to give you a nice curve. When you're doing this, you want to use a relatively coarse file. So I did switch from the aluminum. I was using a fine file. This one is much coarser. This one, I think the other one is listed as fine. This one's listed as coarse. And that works better for this plastic. You'll get there with a fine file. It's just going to take longer. So we're going to go ahead and round off all 4 of the corners on this piece and all 4 of the corners on the other piece. Again, we just don't want it to be sharp. You can do this on the grinder if you have one. So you could take this over to the grinder and rotate the whole piece there to get yourself the thing. That's fine. If you're comfortable using that tool, you can probably save a little bit of time. For me, with the coarse file, it feels like this doesn't take super long. So I don't mind doing it by hand. There's 3 edges. Rotate in our 4th edge here, and we'll do that. Seems good. So that piece is done. Grab our other one. We're going to do the same thing. I guess my one warning for this is I like using the table. I have in the past just held it in my hand and done this. But if you're doing it this way, what can happen is when you come over the edge, you can file your knuckle. So I think it's a lot better if you keep your hand back past the table. So the first thing that I'm going to hit if I slide is the table. Although you can do it the other way if you are careful and it doesn't slide on you. This way is much, much better. Also, the piece is more stable. It doesn't move around as much, so it's easier to kind of file those edges. All right, 2 down, 2 more to go on this piece. And when you're doing this too, you don't have to push in super hard. Just like getting contact there and pushing the file, it's going to do a lot of the cutting for you. So that's the other thing. If you're pushing really hard, that's a good chance for it to slip and crash into something that you don't want it to hit. All right, all rounded, good. And then the next problem is all of the edges that we cut, and maybe some of the edges that were factory cut, are going to need some deburring. So you can feel there is some chunkiness and roughness here. Depending on what saw blade you used, like along this edge, I can definitely feel some ridges and stuff. I could try to file that out. I'm not going to be super worried about the edge having, I mean, it's very small bumps, but you can sort of see the saw blade teeth as it went through there. I'm more worried about the edges. So just like with aluminum, we could go down the edge with the file to knock it off. And it'll take a few tries, but that's pretty good on that edge. The other thing you can do, and I think for me this is one of my favorite things, is with a deburring tool, I like to, if you kind of just hold the piece, you can drag it slowly towards yourself. And you get these really satisfying curly cues where it just kind of takes that edge off in one go. I like flipping the piece around so it's always on my right because I'm right-handed, to where I can just always have that same motion. And then I'm sort of pulling back with my body, so when I get to the end, my whole body is going to move back. If I'm pulling with just my arm when I get to the end, this could snap off and move. So that way it's just a little bit more under control. But it's not too bad to, even if you do it that way, if you bump into yourself, because most of this is not sharp. So that's good. That's nice and clean. We're going to do that now for all of the sides of this piece that look like they have some issues. You can also switch over and do the other side if you can get the right angle down without flipping it. All right, I think this one is good. So I'll set that down here. Let's deburr the big one. This is really far to reach. All right, go again. Seems good. the long side I did already. This is the long side I didn't do. There we go. And if you can't reach, if you don't quite have the long arms to reach all the way, start somewhere in the middle and come back towards you. And then you can flip it around, and you'll just have to do the other angle on the other side. And that seems pretty good. And which side didn't we do? Oh, is this the edge? This is the edge of the whole thing. So this side, that's why it feels pretty good. So we can just quickly get that, but that's, I think, was a factory edge, so that's in pretty good shape. All right, this piece now, pretty good. I don't feel anything on the edges, so that one is done. All right, let's bring back the giant sheet here. Kind of make a little pile for us. All right, let's bring back the giant sheet and mark up our next cuts. All right, so now, this is just like too close to square. Okay, so this is our 48-inch direction. So here, we are going to take our next cut in, and we said this one was going to be for, and grab those two drawings just to double check. All right, so this one we're going to do KB 25012. This is track roof, and we're going to do the back guard panel KB 25021. Again, the track roof needs 18.25. The back panel technically wants 18, but I know it will fit as 18.25. So we're going to do an 18.25 cut all the way along this edge next. Okay, so let's mark our 18.25 first, so we can make sure we're starting where we want to start there. And really, I don't need to do the whole line for 18.25, since really what I just am looking for is when we nibble it at the beginning to see if it is lined up nicely with that mark. But the ones that we actually need, okay, so we're going to be off the edge of the table. So this is, we do want to add 1.5 inches here. So instead of 18.25, we're going to do 19.25, 19.75. So 19.75. So we're going to be right about there. And then let's do another mark somewhere else. Try to make it straight, 19.75. Okay. And here. All right, then we'll take this to the edge. Now the downside of not drawing the whole line, oh wait, I gotta turn this. This is still way too long to go that direction. We gotta turn this so we're going this direction. Okay. So the downside to not drawing the line all the way is we have to make sure that we don't cut the table. So I'm gonna line this dot up, again, about 3/4 of an inch in, so about half of that 1.5 inches will be on the table. And then the other half will be off the table. That seems pretty good, except we want to slide this way so we're supported for the entire cut. Like that. Okay. That looks good. Go ahead and get our clamps on now. I'm going to get this side first, so we'll come all the way down to, let's see, I want to come from this side. All right, let's get on that mark. And on this mark too. You see, I think that rotated on me, so I'm going to check this side again. Yep, we definitely moved a little bit on that mark. Okay. That looks good. That looks good. Let's check what it looks like with the saw lining. Okay, that doesn't look good because this clamp is in the way. Let's move the clamp all the way to the end of the table. All right, now it looks good. So let's see. That looks pretty good. We want to keep the line. So in this case, I think I am going to end up taking the line out. So we need to add that extra line width. So I'm shifting over basically the thickness of a line on both sides, and then we'll check again. That looks pretty good. Maybe I went too far. Let's take a little nibble and see. Oh no, that's perfect. Right on the edge of the line. All right. So now we are ready to cut all the way. All right, I let the plastic bend too much there. That's why it bogged down. So we'll back up a little bit, try again. There we go. All right, one more time. Let me clean off this table and get rid of the old piece, and then we'll mark up the new one and cut it down to size. All right, double check this one as well. Should be 18 1/4. So we'll measure both sides here. That is really, really close to 18 1/4, maybe just a hair under, less than a 1/16 under for sure. And this side, we are also, yeah, pretty much right on. That one looks like it's the same on both sides. So we've got our 18 1/4 section. First piece we're gonna do is that track roof, KB 25012. This is gonna be 18.25 by 18.25 square. So we're basically going to do the same thing we did before. We'll measure out here and do a mark at 18 1/4. And again, I'm going to make it so that the line stays. Good. And I guess I don't really need the second one since the way we did this last time worked out fine. So there's my line on the edge that I can look at. And then we know we need to add that 1.5 plus a little bit for the track. All right, so 18.25, this is the same number, I should have just remembered it. All right, 19.75, right there. And then another one over here somewhere, 19.75. Okay. Got the two marks at 19.75. We've got to line this up. So the cut line is off the edge of the table. And then we can clamp it down. Line this side up too. And let's see if we are close. We are very much not close at all. That's why we measure twice. Oh, okay, I put the line at 18. That's on me. Okay, so this should not be at 18. This should be 18 1/4. Okay, so let's go ahead and remark that line. 18 1/4. 1/4. Okay, so not this one, but this one. And then did I get my 1.5 right, or am I just completely wrong? Yeah, my 1.5 is good. Okay. So I did the math right the second time, but not the first time. That looks much closer, but again, it looks like I'm going to take the line out. So we're just going to move one more line's thickness over on these. All right, that looks close. Let's check again. That looks pretty good. Let's give it a try. Yeah, I think that's going to be right on, so let's go ahead and make our cut. All right, check it out. 18.25. It's just a hair under, and then 18.25 and 18.25. All right, perfect. This piece is good. Well, we still got filing and holes to put in it, but it is cut to size. And like we said, this is KB 25012, the track roof. All right, we'll put that aside. We'll do the deburring on both of these together once we get our second one cut here. All right, and this one is going to be our back guard panel. It wants 18 by 18, but again, I think it works fine as 18 by 18.25. So this is going to go on the back of the robot when all is said and done. And there's a pretty big gap between this and like the bottom frame of the robot. So that chassis that we built, this is going to be above that by several inches. So if it sticks down an extra 1/4 inch, it's not really going to hurt anything. It'll save some time. But again, if you wanted to, we could cut this to 18.25, then you could come back or you could cut this to 18, and then you could come back and cut the other direction by 1/4 inch to make that one also exactly 18. All right, let's mark it up. So in from this edge, we are looking to cut at 18. So we'll mark that here. All right, and again, we want to keep the line. And then for our track, we're going to be at 19.5, plus that mysterious little bit that I keep having to adjust for every time. All right, 19.5 plus like the width of a Sharpie. I guess I'll just put the other side of the Sharpie on that line, and maybe that'll work out for me. All right, same thing over here, 19.5, and we'll have the Sharpie completely on the other side. All right. Seems good. Yeah, okay. Because I already marked it, we'll just go ahead and clamp this down, but there is a world where I should flip the piece around. They're not that much different this time though, so we'll go ahead and cut it this way. All right, and we'll be right on the outside of the line. Sounds good, and then over here. Right on the outside of the line again. Yeah, all right, let's check. That looks correct. Let's do a little nibble. Yeah, it's just about right on. All right, so maybe I was just lining up on the wrong side of the line the whole time. Here we go. right. Double check. So this direction was the 18 1/4. It's actually just under 18 1/4. And then this direction is pretty much right on 18 all the way across. Looking good. All right. So again, I'm going to leave this one slightly long and save some time. But if you wanted to, we're 18 this way. We're 18 1/4 this way. So I could turn this, make a mark at 1/4, and then do the 1.75, and then just cut that tiny bit off. But I don't think it's going to matter. Let's go ahead and file this down. And we got to do, if you remember those radius corners, we got to do all 4 on this one. Oh, let's label this first, and then we'll get to it. So this was KB 25021. Back panel guard. All right. And we're just going to get those radiuses on here. It's nice and round. And number 3. Fourth corner. All right, our other piece here. Let's get those 4 corners. Seems good, move on. Keep going. And last one. That's good. All right, and we're going to deburr the edges again. Oh, that was definitely the untouched edge. And you can still deburr that. You get a little bit of a chamfer on the edge that way, so it's a little less sharp. But yeah, you can skip that side too if you realize that was the factory edge. Looks good. And I think we did this side already. Oh, yeah, we definitely did this side already. All right, cool. That one's done. Let's get our other one. This is the, no, this definitely looks like a cut side. No, this is probably the factory side. And then side number 4. All right, these 2 pieces are now cut to size and cleaned up. let's, again, clean up a little bit and then bring the big piece back out, and let's do our last 2 pieces. All right, the last bit of that 4 foot by 4 foot. Remember, mine was a little longer, so yours is probably going to be a little bit shorter here because we did 18 and then 18 and a quarter. So we should be 36 and a quarter off of your about 48. So you should have another 12 or so inches left. I've got 23. I've got like an extra 10 inches here. So don't be surprised if yours looks a little shorter. That's okay. All right, our last piece, KB25011, is the track side panel, and it is 6 inches wide and 20.75 inches long. So since we only have 12 inches left, we got to do the long cut. And actually, even mine is long enough that I could do 2 strips this way, and maybe keep a bigger piece. But since yours is going to be about this big, it's not long enough to take the piece and run it this way. So we're going to have to do, again, a long cut on the 48-inch side. And 20.75 times 2 is going to be 41.5, which is less than 48. So we should be good. So same process. We're going to mark our first one at at 6 inches. That's what we're doing here. We're doing 6 inches. All right, and I want to keep the line. There is my mark for that. And then for the saw, we're going to do an extra 1.5 inches. So this is going to be 7.5. And then we'll do another one somewhere over here at 7.5. All right. Then we'll go ahead and get this lined up and clamped in place. I think I got to move these things out of the way because we got to rotate it again. Yep, like this. Cool. And we'll take our marks and make sure our 2 marks are on the table. But our cutting edge, our cutting location will be off the table. And we'll line it up. And then this one has to be all the way out of the way. All right, let's double check. That looks good. I'll do the little nibble test here. Yep, that's going to be just perfect. And I just got paranoid, so I'm going to measure again. That is 6 inches, which is what we want. All right, so we're ready to go. We'll just take this whole strip off. All right, let's see, we want to see 6 inches. That is 6 inches. We want to see 6 inches. That is a tiny bit under 6 inches. We should be good though. And we'll start on the 6-inch side and we'll work off of that. So this is our better side. So I'll mark the side that started at 6 inches here. And so now I know that is the edge that is, right, that was like perfect 6. Then when I cut 20.75, the other side where it gets off by, I mean, it doesn't get off by much. It gets off by like a 1/16 of an inch, less than a 1/16 of an inch. Then I will have less of it that is wrong and more of it that's right. But it really shouldn't matter too much. All right, so now this piece, we're going to have to cut down into our 2, like I said, 20.75-inch sections. Let me go ahead and one more time vacuum this up, clean it up, and then we'll get our last 2 cuts done. Okay, let's mark the length of this piece then, 20.75. And you know what? This time I said that I would show you how to do a razor blade one, scoring and bending and breaking. And These are the only two pieces left, so we'll do it with these two pieces. It is the same process if you have a longer piece. It's just going to take more time scoring the line. And the key is just be as careful as you can when you're scoring the line to stay straight against your straight edge. But what that means for me is I can mark at 20.75, and we don't need to mark that extra bit that we had been doing for the extra width of the saw. So we go right to 20 3/4, 20.75. All right, and I want to keep the line again. And over here, 20 3/4, and we'll keep the line again, 20 3/4. Okay. So then the way this is going to work is let's see. I guess I have to turn it this way because of the way my table is shaped. So what I want to do is I want to get everything sort of right on the corner of the table. So I'm going to line up so my cut will be just off the edge of the table, just a little bit past the edge. And then I'm going to line up this straight edge right on the end of my marks, because that's where I want to cut. All right, and that's pretty close. Let's get one side clamped down. This was the better clamp anyway. All right, and then this side still looks lined up. So I really want these to be squeezed down as tightly as I can make it. And then make sure you start, if you're doing this, get a brand new razor blade in your cutter if you can. It's going to make your life definitely better. And the key is we just going to go right against the edge of the straight edge. And as long as you stay right against the edge of that straight edge the whole time, we're going to get a very good cut. And if you get to the end and the clamp's in the way, that's okay. We'll turn around at some point and do the other direction. And you, for the first couple, don't have to push super hard. We're just trying to get a nice groove going. And if you feel it slip off the edge or slip out of the groove, just stop and go back and try again. So you might get some extra scratches along the way. Let's switch over and we'll do the same thing from this side. So get right along the edge here. All right. One more time all the way across, and then we'll give it a try. So each time we're just trying to get that groove a little bit deeper, and that should hopefully be good. All right, so the goal here now is I'm going to just, with both hands, I'm going to do my best to push straight down, flat across the whole piece, and it should crack in the little area. And I'm going to push hard to get it to go. So here we go. And that was it. That was a very clean cut. Let's see how we did size-wise. That is 20 3/4, pretty much right on. So that's going to work. We've got one here. Let's label that one, and then we'll do the same thing one more time. So this is trackside panel KB 25011, 2511. All right. We'll unclamp this. Close that. So again, like I said, if it's a long piece, it's the same thing, except just make sure you're staying right alongside that straight edge all the way along the whole piece, right? Wherever that straight edge is. Take your time, make sure it stays nice and flat the whole time. If it wanders off, that's going to be where you run into trouble, or if you start tipping and it goes deeper in or out. So just keep it nice and flat. And again, like I said, if you do the first few nice and easy, usually you end up with a groove that you can keep everything in after that. All right, so this one now we need 2 more marks at 20 3/4, 20.75, so we can make a second one. 20.75, we want to keep the line. 20.75, keep the line. All right. And you can do a quick, since we need two of the same, you can do a quick check here. Like, yep, if the line is kept, that's going to be a perfect match. All right, so we'll spin this out and get this started again. All right, and remember, once again, you want those marks just off the end of the table. And that's going to make it snap the easiest when the time comes. But too far off the end of the table, it's hard to, like just right off the end. So it's supported where we want it to break, pretty much exactly. And take your time with this step. Like, make sure you get it nice and lined up. Seems good. And yeah, that looks good. I just give myself as much room as I can here. All right, and once again, we're going to just score it, staying right along the edge. Okay, let me get the other direction. Nice and flat. Okay, and then just a couple more to make it a little deeper. Okay, and then let me just get this edge, make sure it's also deep enough. All right, let's give it a try again. So we're just going to, again, push down, and it should snap. Yeah, that time it broke. The plastic, or the coating, didn't break, but we can just cut that off. All right, let's check this one. We want to see 20.75. Yep, that's a 36th of an inch short on that side, and the same on this side. So that is going to, or 32nd of an inch. So that's going to work. If I hold them both up together, I can feel, yeah, one is just a teeny tiny bit shorter than the other. That's going to be just fine. All right, we have to radius these and then deburr them. So let's get that done really quickly here. And I will say too, these ones are going to be kind of more exposed than some of the other ones. So a lot of the other ones, they're flat panels that get attached directly onto some of the aluminum box. So the corners aren't really sticking out. They're going to be kind of covered by the box. This one, at least on one side, the corner will be up in the air, and that is where a ball could hit and pop. So if you're going to make only some of them nice, make sure these are amongst the some of them. But of course, if you have time, you should make all of them nice. All right, those are all rounded, not going to pop any balls or scratch any people. Let's do the second one now. Looks good. Two more corners. Last corner. Okay, and clean off the edges with the deburring tool here. Looks good. And the other one. Could do the same side twice. I don't know, I'm gonna do this side just in case. All right, good. This one doesn't have a label on it yet, so let's add that. This is another KB 25011. All right, so that is all of our parts. We have two KB 2511s. We have one KB 2020 and a KB 2021. So these are going to be the front, these two are going to be the front and back panels on the robot, just to keep stuff from getting stuck inside and keep stuff protected. The big long one, our KB 2510, is going to be the floor of our, basically the area where we load in the coral game piece, the big PVC pipe, and drop it down. Then the KB 2511s are going to be the sides that go up, and the 2512 is going to be the top of that chamber where we're going to be able to drop in our stuff. So we've got all of our plastic pieces now cut to size. In the next video, we're going to start drilling holes and getting the pieces prepped for assembly. But, of course, before we go, we have to give another special thanks to Argosy for making this all possible, to First and Andymark for parts and support, and to our hosts here, Team 302, Lake Orion High School.